fantastic because we had a rate update yesterday. We had another quarter point cut. And so,
Yes.
Nicole, I'm so interested to know what's going on kind of in your world in the background, the conversations that you're having now with clients. And then maybe just some of the conversations that you're having with your colleagues in terms of outlook and what that looks like. If you could share that with the group today, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, first of all, I was up until like just after one yesterday because I had three clients that were sitting like just literally have been on the fence, put in offers yesterday, and we're in negotiations until like really, really late last night. So it was just it's funny because like it's not new. We expected this, especially this cut. Like, we figured it was coming, whether it was going to be conservative as a quarter point or a half a point, even some economists were saying. We knew it was going to happen. And yet, literally, my phone was like from the afternoon, nope, we're going out to see property. And then like offers again. So I don't know if that was just yesterday or if it's going to continue. But like activity pretty much right away again. So we'll see. But in terms of the shift, you're starting to see again a little bit more of a pickup with the whole variable rates and everything. People are finally starting to. I don't know if you guys. I sent out an article yesterday that talking on that I wrote on variable rates. You guys already know how I feel about this. That it's something that we should be doing right now, or most clients should be entertaining simply for the flexibility. And up until pretty much now, it's been me kind of having to remind people, whether it's my realtor partners or clients, that hey, like we shouldn't be, just kind of keeping this out of our minds right now because the variable rates have had such a bad reputation, right? So,
Mhm.
but now people are starting to willingly say, okay, hey, Nicole, tell me more about this. I know you mentioned this before, but and just to recap on that, it's again because if we expect that we're continuing in this declining rate environment, however fast and however long it's going to last, if we expect that we're going to be there for the foreseeable future, the variable rates will provide flexibility in that clients can ride the wave with the variable rate. Sure, if you want, so you lock in, you stay on a variable rate, no big deal. But for clients that are still more partial to a fixed rate, if we expect again we're in this declining rate environment, you guys have heard me say that the variable rate, the Bank of Canada only pertains directly to the variable rates, right? So if we think that this trickle effect that will eventually happen in the coming months, that will eventually have the fixed rate start coming back down too, then choosing a variable rate now is allows you basically to lock into a fixed rate, a lower fixed rate um
In the
rate
future.
later,
Yeah.
right? Like in the coming months, right? Because it's not going to be this, okay, hey, we saw a decrease tomorrow, we're going to see, fixed rates decrease next week, right? A lot of the things, a lot of the decreases and stuff we've seen over the past few months, like lenders are already pricing these decreases in for the fixed rates and stuff too, because we knew this was kind of going to happen to an extent, right? So to answer your question, Dylan, basically it's just there's a lot more talk about it, and I'm starting to see literally even within the last 24 hours um like clients or even other realtors just initiate the conversation with me as opposed to me having to remind people, right? Because like I said, up until now, it's been me typically saying, hey guys, don't rule this out, right? Again, it may
Mhm.
not be for everybody, but don't rule it out because we all have this, bad reputation when it comes to the variable rates because, so many people have been burned. But we do expect again that we're in a continued rate environment. I'm expecting like any day now the discounts on the variable rates themselves to get slashed in half, because now that we're starting to see the prime rate continue to come down. Because remember, with a variable rate, the way it works is it's prime, so whatever the lender set through the Bank of Canada, whatever that is, now it's sitting at 6.45. And then when if we get your client a variable rate, or you guys are on a variable rate, you have a discount, right? So we're 6 discount off of prime. So as this comes down and decreases, your rate decreases as well. But you always have that.
What, sorry,
Uh,
what is the variable rate right now? Sorry.
with most lenders, prime rate is 6.45. So we
6.45.
started at 7.2 was kind of our high.
So
With
like even so after yesterday, that 6.45 is now down to six, or no, was
No,
that
sorry,
now
after?
it's down
it
to
was at
6.5.
6.7. Yeah,
Okay.
now today, as of yesterday, sorry,
Yeah.
yes, as of yesterday, it's at 6.45.
Okay.
And so, but up until now, like if you spoke to me even last week, I had discounts of 1% still with some lenders, right? Which is still quite good. And then over the last couple of weeks, you're starting to see them trickle down. So like don't like I would expect that we're probably going to start going back to maybe a 0.3 discount, a 0.4 discount soon.
Right.
Because again, like lenders are doing a really good job at trying to get clients to lock into fixed rates because now they know what's kind of happening and they're just like, hey, let me get what I can get for as long as I can get, kind of thing, right? So, but yes, as we, continue to see these decreases, I expect, like, it probably started with the big banks. The lenders are going to start decreasing the discounts themselves, right? So like I said, I'm still getting, depending on the loan amount, I'm still getting 0.7, 0.8 in some cases when I'm like really pushing, but I've had some
Off the
come back.
6.45 off that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But we'll see what I get today, right? Because the new rates will take effect today.
Yeah.
And just to know, I know you guys know this, but just to, like, there are a couple lenders, TD, RBC, a couple of those that actually have a higher prime rate. So they sit about 15 basis points higher. So yeah, some of them will sit higher. So sometimes it's funny because clients will come to me and be like, oh, well, TD offered me a much better discount. I'm like, they didn't explain to you that their
It was
sits
much higher
higher.
to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just, important to understand that. But yeah,
Well, I had
so
a question about that actually,
yeah, of
with
course.
TD and RBC, to be honest, is I've been reading online, I've been seeing, I thought I saw a video, I don't know, I saw something talking about that there's a bit of a rate war going on in terms of how competitive they are. They're trying to get, I guess, mortgages or whatnot. I don't know what that looks like, but what is kind of happening with that? I don't know if you're aware of it or anything like that.
100%. It's the, like, the gray hair and the bags are all because of these
Uh,
stress right now. It's honestly, it's brutal. I'll always like be straight up with you guys.
yeah.
It's really bad. So when you guys hear me say to you on a weekly basis that rates can literally change at any point in time, like what your client's friend and brother got yesterday could be very well different for the exact same circumstances today, right? So it's really difficult on our side. The reason for that is because it's fighting. Like, literally everybody is fighting for the market share. And in full transparency, it's frustrating because the banks themselves, the branches, are realizing that they're losing a lot of market share to brokers because of how challenging the market is, and like, clients need us to be able to. It's always been the case, but I mean more so now, especially because of how
Mhm.
challenging it is, right? So you guys have heard me tell you, horror stories of, I say something to a client where I'm like, you need to do this and this is what we need to do, and RBC or somebody else swoops them in and said, oh, but I'm going to give you, this rate, and they try to switch it over, right? So but there's a couple different things that are happening outside of just that kind of war, we'll call it. I'm sure you guys have heard of all the sort of, financial trouble, so to speak, that TD's in terms of their, regulations and audited, getting audited and stuff. I mean, they're not going anywhere, but because of that, the optics, they're really, really trying to steal some market share back because they've been hit really hard because of this, the optics around them for the fraud and stuff investigations. So TD's being really, really aggressive. So there's that. It's starting to become a lot more known that not all lenders are created equal, or the products, especially with the big banks. So like, I will have a conversation with my clients right off the bat. When I look at their portfolio and I see, okay, hey, or their profile, I should say, and I say, okay, hey, this is what we need. This is the product that's better for you, for example. Somebody like an RBC or a CIBC are literally the worst of the big banks, in my opinion, because they have the worst, like, prepayment privileges. They're like 10%. They're a little bit more restricted and stuff like that. Now, a lot of clients, the average clients, especially your first time home buyers, or maybe even just like, upsiders and stuff like that, that have not been in the market too long, don't understand that actually matters, right? So because, like, for you, like, they may come to me and say, who cares, Nicole? I don't care if you can get me 20% prepayment with Scotia. It doesn't matter. I don't have 20% to prepay anyway. But I'm going to tell them, well, you should care, and it does matter, because even, like, there's ways that we can put in, like, a home equity line of credit product that you could use that HELOC to, one, prepay your mortgage to make it tax deductible, and you don't have to have any extra money. You could use it for investments. There's so many different things. So those products actually matter. So the more that people are starting to become aware of the fact that, like, the RBCs and the CIBCs don't offer those things, or they're not as attractive, RBC and CIBC are now scrounging, and they're like, okay, hey, well, we're losing market share again. I mean, it's not dramatic, but they realize that it's happening. So they're starting to be more aggressive with rates again, because now they realize that people are becoming more aware of not equal products, right? So it's just a war right now. Like, you know, with clients understanding, okay, what truly is the best product for them versus the best rate. And then you've got somebody like a Scotia, for example, that is like, fine, I'm not going to compete with TD and CI or RBC and CIBC. We're way more superior. And if you don't understand that, then go to them, right? So it really becomes down to, and that's where it's challenging on our side as well, too, because you're trying to explain to the client, well, what exactly do you want? Because if a client says to me, Nicole, I understand what you're saying, take your advice, for lack of a better way of saying it, I still don't care, just get me the best rate, then that's what we do, right? But there are clients that understand that and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And no, I want to put myself in a position where I can make my primary residence tax deductible. So how do I do that? And if we do that, we take off those lenders off the table.
Yeah, I want to pull away from that for a moment because I feel like we're getting a little too deep into everything else that's going on as opposed to some of the stuff that we can use to service our clients. But what I really heard there, Nicole, was even just the idea of using a HELOC to prepay a mortgage, and then you mentioning that was tax deductible. That's
100%.
something that I didn't know in full transparency.
Yep.
And so it's that great reminder of like, you need to be setting your clients up with great advisors to bring this type of value to them. Because like I said before, if you can show somebody how you save them 20, 30 grand over the next couple of years or the next term of their mortgage, you're going to be that hero, right? So that's why we want to make sure that we're allying with people that can give this kind of advice. Because again, that gives you that chance to stand out. Not only do you make a client for life, but it's a great way to get more referrals. So I love that you brought that up because, again, that's something that I didn't know. And I think that it needs to probably be talked about a little bit more frequently, right?
100%.
Yeah. I can say anecdotally on my end, I don't know if it's just we're back in September. Mike and I have said a couple times we're feeling rejuvenated. It's just something about that time of year coming off the summer months. But I've had showings pick up on 2 condos that have been quiet the entire summer. Like just in the last few days, we have more bookings. Yeah. And we just had like you said, Nicole, you had people that have been sitting on the fence put in offers last night.
All last night.
People just reach out and say, hey, we just saw this house. We'd love to go take a look at it. Can you let us know when you can go see? So people are doing that stuff in the background. And if you're not out there talking to them, there's a good chance they could bump into somebody else. So that's that priority of why we need to make sure that we're upping our contact game right now. We need to be upping our level of lead generation, our follow-up, and our database reach outs.
100%. And I think it's again, it's really important because just because somebody, you know, is speaking to somebody like Daniel, we just literally had this conversation yesterday. Like, it doesn't matter. Like you could speak to somebody who, you know, maybe is working with somebody else, but when they realize that you provide so much more value, you're giving them a lot more advice, you're actually there to support them, and they're not getting that from who they currently have, you know, that's a possibility to win somebody over there as well.
Oh, absolutely. Dano, I don't know that specific story, but 100%, if you're showing up and you're serving somebody at a higher level, they're going to take notice of it because you're the one that's providing the information. You're following up with them. You're giving them more information like, hey, I spoke to my broker and they mentioned that you could use this strategy here and it might be a way to save some extra money, or make sure that we have this ready for when our pre-approval comes through. All of that stuff absolutely makes a difference, right? I think that's a very important thing to take note of. But what I want the takeaway to be, of course, is that we need to up that level of contact right like now, because now more than ever, we're in that little bit of a shift where people are having these conversations. There's been another cut. And I was reading a great thing by Ron Butler. He's very active on Twitter. He's always sharing his thoughts. He's on Instagram as well. Yeah, he's very fun to listen to.
I was just gonna say he's a character. He's brilliant, but he's funny at the same time. Well,
yeah. I mean, he's not for everybody probably,
yes,
but for me, I find him very digestible because he's not dry.
Yeah.
But even just talking about the different at points at which it's going to be more viable for investors again, like how many more cuts do we need to go through that? When does the general public start to pay attention to what's going on? Because again, most people, like, the rates have been the biggest discussion they've ever been in a long time because of how quickly they went up and how much of an impact they've had. But again, for the most part, the public only really pays attention when it's time for them to get into renewals or they want to purchase something. Right. And so if it's not renewal time for me, they're not really paying attention. But now that we've had so many cuts and we're trending backwards, like in terms of those cuts coming down, I think more people are starting to understand, okay, this is now the norm. We are moving back down to a lower interest rate environment. We're not in that state anymore where we're worried about them going back up. Whereas the general public previously, they didn't know that stuff, right? They're not watching it on the day to day like we are because they're not dealing with pre-approvals and getting people their financing like we are every day. So again, I think because we're in that environment now where we've had more cuts, people are paying more attention, people are having more discussions about it. Is it time to do it? And again, if they're having those discussions and we're not there to have them, it's a lost opportunity on our end.
And I think one of the biggest things too that you guys can reiterate to your clients is that, because I get this question a lot, like, for example, if somebody is now potentially thinking of maybe a variable rate for all of the reasons that we just discussed, a lot of the hesitation sometimes is, well, Nicole, okay, but when am I going to know to lock in? Like, how do I, and that's where I reiterate to them, I'm not going anywhere, right? Just because you close in 4 weeks, like, this is the difference between whether it's myself or whoever, what other brokers you guys are working with, they will have that relationship afterwards as well, right? So like they can, and I always tell clients, there's not going to be any clear set day where I call people, I'm like, this is the day you have to lock in. Like, where, I wish it would be easier, but at least we'll know, okay, hey, now makes a bit more sense, or based on the budget that we did before, this makes sense for you. So just remind your clients that this is, again, the reason why they have that relationship with their broker is that, it's post-closing as well too. It's no different than the relationship they have with you. Their broker's not going anywhere, right? So they can always continue to check in to say, okay, hey, is it a better time to lock in, and understand it? Because they get a bit, nervous with that.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think I've ever received like an annual review call from my mortgage broker. Through all the times that I've had my mortgage, I don't think I've ever received an annual review of like, hey, this is where you're at. And, even
Touch
for
point.
what's that?
That's a good touch point for like
It's a great,
I'm surprised when you're saying that to me. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
That's like,
right. And so I think that's a great reminder for us in real estate. On the sales side, same thing. If you aren't giving your clients that checkup call, who's now sitting there realizing when somebody else brings it up and they're sitting there like, yeah, my agent hasn't called me for an annual review of like what's going on with my house or what's going on in the market. And Mike, we've said this numerous times, like, do you want to be the professional? Act like the professional. Your accountant gives you annual reviews. I mean, they kind of have to, but nonetheless, they give you your annual reviews. You should be getting your annual checkup from your doctor. Like all those different professions, it should be a set point, and that's something that we need to make sure that we're doing in our business as well. Because again, if my mortgage broker was doing that for me all the time, I would be much more inclined to make sure I keep giving them referrals because I'm like, hey, I know the service that they're going to get, right? And that's going to be the difference maker.
Exactly. And that's something that you guys can even, kind of jump in on too, in terms of like, if you have clients that, you closed on, like that had a purchase, like your purchases last fall, for example, that's a great touch point for you. It's not even annual, you're just kind of checking in. But if we know, or at least I'm telling you guys, so you guys know that there's a great possibility that clients who locked in at a fixed rate around this time last year could actually break their mortgage right now, still have to pay a hefty penalty, but overall it makes way more sense for them because they'll get a lot more of a value back if kind of, broke their mortgage right now. And I'm not suggesting that's for everybody, but it's still just a good touch point for you guys to be like, hey, by the way, like, how's it going? Things are getting a bit better. Just make sure, they check in with their mortgage broker. Cause that's something that we do for my clients on a regular basis, that we're monitoring that and saying, hey, because this is a unique environment where maybe it does make, more sense to do that kind of stuff, but their clients are not going to know if we're not checking in.
Yeah.
Right?
And actually, that's a great point because we have done that in the past as well, where we have broken the mortgage because the rates declined enough where it made sense, where even with the penalty, we were still coming out on top.
Exactly.
Right. But again, if you're the person that brings that to their attention on a way to save over the next 5 years, it's a big difference maker in terms of the value that you're providing. 100%. Right. And so if you don't have clients that closed last year because you're just getting started or you're just re-kicking back up. Sorry, Hamid, I'm going to mute you there. Because you're just kicking back up. That's totally okay. You can still reach out to your sphere, to your database, to the people that you know, and offer those same services. Either whether it's just checking in because you know their address, you can update them on what's going on in their neighborhood. You could arrange a call where you're like, hey, I'm doing these financial checkups backup calls. I bring my mortgage broker onto the call. You can do it on Zoom. You can make it really easy and just schedule a bunch of those for the month of September and watch what comes from it, right? Try something different where you're booking those type of financial appointments for people and say, hey, just curious, this is where you're at. You give us some numbers and I've got my financial advisor, I've got my mortgage advisor beside me and can give you some tips on potentially how you could save some money this year or over the next 2 years. And again, watch how you stand out versus other people.
100%. It's what's on everybody's mind right now, right? So if you guys are bringing that to the table, then for sure they're going to remember that.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else necessarily that we need to talk about on the lending side right now. Is there any challenges that you're seeing that agents should be aware of in terms of getting stuff prepared? And while you think about that, I can share a quick story. I was talking with an agent last week. Their client didn't want to go through a broker. They ended up going straight through the bank, and the numbers are super tight. And ultimately, it came back that they needed to do some big repairs on the house that they purchased, and there's no money there. There's no wiggle room. And so I told her, I'm like, well, you've got a lot of options. You should be talking with somebody that can talk about maybe setting up a HELOC on that so that they can pay that down afterwards because they're worried about having funds on hand after closing. Yep. I'm like, what kind of solutions has the lender come up with so far? And they're like, oh, they just said the numbers didn't work. So again, if you're just going to the branches a lot of the time, or you're just dealing with somebody on the phone on the other end of there, they're not usually solution finders. And I don't want to slam lawyers either, but this is a similar analogy where I found lawyers are fantastic at protecting you and pointing out problems. They're not solution finders a lot of the time. Most of the time when a transaction's falling apart, it's the realtor. Even though we can't do much in those scenarios, we're the ones that keep talking to the different parties to trying to find solutions that work. And there are certain fields and there are certain people that are more about like, hey, this doesn't work and that's all it is, right? Yes. And then there's solution finders. So you want to make sure that you're working with a solution finder or a solution bringer to the table so that they have those options.
Yeah, 100%. And this is again where the pre-approval part of it is so important. When I say pre-approval, I'm not talking about the rate hold from a lender. I'm talking about the actual assessment
going through the documents.
Yeah, because you can typically, mitigate a lot of those issues because you're going to be looking at different scenarios, right? In terms of, okay, hey, well, what this could possibly be an issue, or if we run into this, or, depending on the situation. But I wanted to also mention too, be mindful of it's a really challenging time for quick closings right now. So 30 days is even tough depending on the situation and depending on the lender. So it just be mindful of that. And when I'm saying that, I don't mean like it's not doable, but talk to your broker up front because like for those of you who've worked with me, I will say, okay, hey, this is what we need. This is what we need. A lot of it has to do with, even if the deal is good on my side in terms of I've got everything ready, I'm seeing a lot of issues with down payment and all stuff that's outside of your control and my control. So liquidating investments, a lot of clients, especially first-time home buyers now, are a little bit more savvy when it comes to using the FHSA, a bit more with their RSPs, all those kinds of things. All good stuff, but the lenders are brutal right now when it comes to two things. Again, liquidating the actual investments, which take time. And two, on the lender side of it, in terms of the purchase, because there's so much more an uptick in fraud and things like that, they're doing a lot more due diligence when it comes to going through all the bank statements and going through the transactions. And so even if we've thoroughly vetted something up front, I'm not going to see the new statements until the transactions are liquidated and stuff. So there's always going to be a new set of transactions that falls on my plate and hence falls on the lender's plate. So I'm starting to see a lot more hiccups with that. And sometimes you just need more time to deal with all of that. So just be mindful, because with the quick closings, your broker should tell you up front, like, okay, hey, we might be tight on a 30-day closing here, depending on the lender they're expecting and if they have to liquidate investments. Because if you've got somebody like, a Scotia, for example, who has a hard stop on being closed, broker complete 2 weeks before, and we only have 2 weeks to get everything else done, it can be a challenge. So don't be alarmed about it. Just make sure you're talking to your broker. Like, don't assume the usual, like, oh, it's 30 days, I'm fine, I don't have to tell anybody about it, I'll give them the offer after. Like, I would have that conversation with your broker up front and just say, hey, are you cool with this based on this situation?
That's a great reminder. Yeah, there was a time where I remember everything was moving so quickly and people were trying to get things done in 2-week and 3-week closings. And I'm like, even then I was like, I feel wildly uncomfortable about how fast this is going. Yeah. And it's funny, the amount of different things along the way in the transaction where 30 days feels super short. So it's so funny that you mentioned this because I did 2 last week that both have 30-day closings. One closes the end of September, one closes like October 1st.
Yep.
And so I'm feeling how tight that is.
Yep.
But at the same point, what I realized was I have my lawyer that I recommend. I sent off all the deal paperwork. I get immediately her email reply saying that she's in a seminar all day and will check in with me tomorrow. Her assistant replied right away, say, Dylan, don't worry, Danielle's out of the office, but we're going to get the file started. We'll send everything off.
Yep.
The other client, they wanted to use their real estate lawyer. So not somebody that I would normally recommend, somebody I know, but not somebody that I would normally recommend. I sent them the deal paperwork Friday morning. Tuesday, I didn't hear anything Friday. Tuesday, I didn't hear anything. Wednesday, I emailed them in the morning to say, hey, just following up to make sure you received everything. It's a 30-day closing. And then not till the afternoon did I get a reply saying that they have all the paperwork. So again, it's not just about you or the lender or, being able to do everything in that time frame. There's insurance. There's other people that might be slow. There's so many different things with a quick closing that can come up. But it's also a reminder of like, hey, make sure that you're working with professionals that you know, like, and trust, that communicate well, that you can rely on getting the transaction done. It's not about the person that's going to give you a referral or a kickback of any kind. It's like, who can I rely on to make sure that they're going to get this transaction done? Because when push comes to shove, that's the biggest part and sometimes the most challenging part.
100%. And that's where sometimes I will say to a client, if you say to me like, no, this is a vacant property, we need X amount for, or this closing, I will go back to both like you guys and the client and say, okay, hey, cool. But then I recommend we, again, use my lawyer and that we use this specific lender, right? Because if they may not necessarily have the exact lowest rate, but they're going to get the deal done for you, right? So that's where sometimes it comes down to that selection as well. Exactly what you said, the team, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So everybody, let's get your daily intentions down there into the chat. What is it that you are focusing on today for your lead generation? When are you doing it? How are you doing it? How long are you doing it? The more specific you can be with your intention to get your calls done or your database touches, just your contacts, let's call it, the more intentional you are, the more likely you are to succeed and to make sure that you're getting it completed. And like we said, right now is a big change in terms of the seasonality of things. I think there's a lot more discussion. Real estate and making a move or making those plans is much more top of mind right now than it was even 2 weeks ago. And so we want to make sure we're in front of people having those conversations. So are you reaching out to your database today? Are you ramping up your online Facebook ads? Are you outdoor knocking? Are you planning for your open houses this weekend? Are you planning a seminar? Like, what are you doing to make sure that you are preparing to have not just preparing, but having all of those conversations and getting ready to book those appointments? And actually, Nicole, we haven't talked about this before, but I am going to throw it out there. Have you considered doing a webinar of some sort where we can invite all of our clients to watch you put on something, and then that way we know that it's a service that you're putting on. We can point our clients towards you, and then it help get the conversation going for everybody.
I actually love that you said that. So yes, that's in the works. I was going to do that back in July and then opted not to do it just because it was the summer. So that'll be coming. I'm just ironing out, and maybe we can even chat more about this too. I've got a couple different ones that I'm doing in general. And so I'm just trying to figure out which one makes the most sense in terms of the topic. But yes, that'll definitely be coming in the next week.
Keep us posted. And guys, Nicole is in the chats so that if you ever need anything, do not hesitate to reach out to her, ask any questions. And Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always so beneficial to have you on there with us so that we can serve our clients.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. All right, everybody, go out and have an amazing day, and we will see you tomorrow.
Excuse me, guys.
Bye.
Sorry, just a second.
Hi, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Hamid,
Hamid, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm also good, thank you. When will you be at the office next time?
I keep missing you. I'm going to be there. Let me see. I think it's Wednesday next week, maybe Wednesday and possibly Thursday.
Okay, there is a guy from overseas, and he's interested to act as a private lender in Canada.
Take care. Yep.